Human.
We live in a society that tells us that we're not really animals, not in the most important ways. But I'm here to tell you that's not true.
We hebben ons op afstand geplaatst van de natuur en van andere dieren, ziet ook schrijver Melanie Challenger. Een positie die onhoudbaar is.
You're listening to the effects of public speaking on my body. You're listening to the fact that I feel like I'm under threat. But it's not just me. Most of us, if we have to stand up and do something in front of one another, our bodies react in an almost identical way. So our hearts speed up and our breathing rate, our respiratory rate gets faster and shallower, and we might start feeling a bit sick and shaky. And those are the effects of stress hormones like cortisol and epinephrine flooding our bodies. The odd thing is, though, that when you listen to my heart, you are changed as well. So when you hear a heart that's beating really fast, or maybe just a fast heart-like beat, like so a pop song, it arouses us, it excites us. Whereas if we hear a lovely, slow, relaxed heart rate, so da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, it calms us down. And the reason for this is that we are social animals. It matters to us how we appear to one another. So, you can't make a fool of yourself on your own. I need an audience for that. But we're also reassured by one another's presence. So how does this matter? Well, it matters because we live in a society that tells us that it doesn't matter. We live in a society that tells us that we're not really animals, not in the most important ways. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. Being animal matters to us enormously. It affects us in the most crucial ways, and fundamentally it is what we are. Consider that we are hierarchical, group-living primates. So we have thrived and survived with one another. And many of the things that we find most threatening follow from this. So we don't like being humiliated in front of one another. We don't like being alone and lonely. But it's not all benefits in a group. There's also competition and pathogens. And diseases spread much more easily. We're living through that right now. And we really don't like pathogens, or the things that carry pathogens. So rats, bats, cockroaches, dirt, strangers. If someone coughs all over us or they don't flush the toilet, we react really strongly to that. And we give that reaction a name. We call it disgust. But ultimately, it's what pathogens and diseases cause that really frightens us. Death. When we look into the future of our children's lives or our lives, we realize we're one day going to cease to be. Now, all animals seek to persist, but for us, we can think about our death any day of the week, whether we face a threat or not, and that makes us a uniquely fearful animal. And it's those fears that help us to understand how we have become an animal that doesn't think it's an animal. Because there is a solution. If what we find so frightening follows from being an animal, then the answer is to not be an animal. And remarkably, throughout much of human history, that is what we've told ourselves in one way or another. So most of our cultures, they have this idea that we're split between a human and an animal part, body and spirit, biology, non-biology. This is substance dualism. In animism, this spirit is seen shared throughout nature. But in the sort of monotheism that got going around the world, eventually the idea developed that it was just humans who had this soul. Mind-body dualism is associated with René Descartes, but by the time we get to Enlightenment thinking, Kant and Locke tell us that it's our minds, it's our cognition that is this special part of us. And this follows from deep intuitions about what we are. So our subjective consciousness gives us the impression that we're a me carried about by our body, that we humans sort of peer out from within an animal skin. And this has woven its way into our philosophy and our legal ideas. So it's the spiritual or the thinking part of us that matters, and the body doesn't matter so much. It doesn't really know anything. And this is followed through into how we've thought about the values. So it's the spiritual part that matters and not the body. So the body dies, the soul ascends to heaven. The body dies, but maybe our minds could be reincarnated were we to upload them in a computer or something. This is a really problematic idea for the rest of biology. Because if it's just this special human, spiritual, or thinking part of us that matters, then how does it matter that we, this special thinking animal, are knowingly causing the extinction of hundreds of other species, are knowingly killing hundreds and thousands of other animals and unique evolutionary pathways? Because by this logic, if it's just this special human part that matters, then as long as we are meeting human needs, we are doing good in the world. But the interesting thing is that fears actually make us favor this idea that we're not really animals. So there's a study from a little while ago by a social psychologist called Jamie Goldenberg. And she took two groups of students, and she exposed one group to a threat. She used a disgust measure developed by Jonathan Haidt and others. And then she gave them two essay questions. One which said, well, humans are animals, yes, but they are uniquely unique. They're exceptional. And the other that argued, well, humans are unique, yes, but in most important ways, we're just like other animals. And the group that had been exposed to the threat favored the exceptionalist essay. Now, there's loads of studies like this. My favorite comes from Wrangler Jeans. So it was marketing research. The Wrangler Jean advert campaign said, we are animals, and they produced a fake one that said, we aren't animals, and you guessed it, the group that was exposed to the threat favored the fake advert over the real advert. There are two important corollaries to this. You know, these are just glimpses of the struggle that we have with being animals. But what matters is that if we tell ourselves that it's just this human substance that matters and the body doesn't really matter, then we forget and deny the ways that our bodies do matter to us. So the early years of our lives, 0 to 3 years, touch, the importance of touch to how we heal and develop. But we also seek to engineer the things that we fear. So we engineer death, disease, so that we will live forever, perhaps. Maybe we could even engineer ourselves to live without our animal bodies at all. But ultimately, this matters most to other species. Because if we are living in this planet where only we matter, then we give ourselves no reasons to care for them. And we are now living in a human planet. We think back to my pounding heart. It doesn't do any animal any good to stay in that state for too long. So we are social animals. To cope with stress, we seek reassurance from one another, and it lowers our heart rate. We cuddle up with each other, and the breathing rate slows. And there's a device that's been developed, I don't sadly have it to show you here, because I could have done with it, that exploits this. It sits on the inside of your wrist, and it mimics a slow, relaxed heartbeat of someone close to you, and it's been found in public speaking anxiety to calm the speaker down. This is because as social animals, we buffer ourselves against stresses in our relationships to one another. Now, lots of animals in nature that are social living animals do this. So horses do this, macaques, prairie voles do this. They cuddle and they relax. But for us, we also buffer ourselves with our ideas of the group. So if we face a threat, we reinforce our belief in our group. We reinforce the idea of the group. So what do we do, though, if we've created this whole group called humanity? And the idea of this group is buffering us from everything we fear. And everything out there, beyond this, is all other life on Earth. In many ways, this is the story of modern civilization. But it isn't ending well for us. In only pursuing human wants, we are damaging and destroying the very Earth and life systems upon which we all rely. Ironically, by trying to escape our fears, we're creating a potentially more fearful world. But there is a solution, and it sort of lies in our biology. So the reason we feel so good when we cuddle up with one another and it relaxes us is because we resurface all of that biology that's there in the early bonds that we have, usually with the mother and the child, but generally in parent-child bonds. This is true across nature. We resurface the same stuff, so the cuddle hormone, like oxytocin, we reuse in our relationships with one another later in life, in our friendships. We have become love generalizers through this. We not only can love one another, complete strangers, complete unrelated individuals, but we can love other species. We can love a marmoset, a skink, a python, a pig, a dog, a cow. We can love infinitely. If anything, that is what is truly unique about us. So what if we created a big group called Life on Earth? And we used that group and identity to buffer us from what we fear? Then perhaps we would end up with a better relationship with the human condition, a better relationship with the finite nature of our lives, and a better relationship, hopefully, with the other species alongside us. And as we face the Anthropocene, surely that is the relationship we all need. Thank you.
Meer brainwash? Meer verrassende ideeën? Ga dan nu naar brainwash.nl.
Human.